Hey plant fam! Welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Jaclynn. This is my jungle, and if you're not new here, thank you so much for coming back. So today I have for you another episode of 12 days of Plantmas. Today is day 6, and I'm going to be talking to you about one of my absolute favorite Hoya in my collection, and that is the Hoya heuschkeliana. I couldn't find how to pronounce it. So I'm just going to keep on saying it the way that I've been saying it this whole time, which is probably incorrect. But anyway, this is my Hoya heuschkeliana inner variegated, and I am obsessed with her. I also have the outer variegated version. What was that? I also have the outer variegated version. She's a little bit smaller and she's super cute. So obviously I wanted to just talk about the whole species today, not necessarily like any specific one. Even if you just have the green one, I have found them all to have the same exact care. So these guys are native to the Philippines. So they grow in a very wet, moist, tropical environment, and they were first recorded back in 1989, which is the year I was born, which I think is pretty cool. So I love her. I think she's absolutely adorable. She is definitely a thinner leaf Hoya, however, and I feel like because she comes from the tropical rainforests and things along those lines, that is why she can be a little bit of a pain in the butt. She's thirsty. So I definitely water, especially this smaller one, pretty frequently, probably every 5 or 6 days. More than I would normally water the rest of my Hoya, that's for sure. But I actually have this plant, both of them really, on the same watering routine as the anthurium you see behind me. This guy actually usually lives right there on the shelf behind me. So I absolutely love her beautiful little cascading leaves, but again, they are pretty thin, they're pretty small, she's pretty thirsty. So if you can get your hands on a more established plant, I do recommend that over like trying to root your own cuttings or growing it from an itty bitty little baby. It can be a little bit more challenging that way. Obviously, if you're not like an underwaterer or a neglectful plant parent, you're not going to have a problem. But I had a problem with these in the past because I wasn't watering them enough. So I have to keep them right in front of my face. In other words, they both live on these shelves behind me here with my anthurium, so they get watered just as often as my anthurium do because they are a little bit more demanding when it comes to water than most Hoya tend to be. But a good rule of thumb is that when you have a thinner leaf, thinner stem Hoya, or just plant in general, but definitely Hoya, it is going to be on the thirstier side. So you definitely want to keep that in mind. But another thing that I found on the internet while I was searching up this plant that I thought was really interesting is that it was classified as an epiphyte, which is a plant that grows on other plants, and something called a lithophyte, which I had to look up because I'd never heard of it before. But apparently it's the name for plants that grow in or on rocks, which I just never even really thought there would be a different name for. But I like learning new words, so hopefully we learned a new word today together. So these apparently can grow both ways. They grow on plants, they grow on rocks, in the cracks and crevices, in really rocky soil. So it does kind of make sense that the roots on this plant tend to be very, very fine and delicate. Ooh, I have her in a clear pot here so you can actually see some of her little roots in there. They're super thin and hair-like, so it does track. It adds up, and that could be why I struggle to grow her in soil. So with that said, she does grow in a pretty chunky soil mix because that is always going to be a go-to for plants that grow like that in nature. But imagine just like growing this on a rock. I don't know. There's so many, I feel like there's so many things I hadn't considered about the way that these plants grow. But I really like her as a trailing plant just because her leaves are so tiny and cascading. They look really pretty, but you can actually also totally put her up on a trellis if you wanted to grow her like that. They do tend to grow a teensy bit faster if you get them climbing on something. So the thing I really love about her as well is her new leaves come in kind of pink. And if you give her bright light, the creamy variegation on the inside will blush to a slight pink, but she doesn't get super bright light where she lives because she lives on this shelf right here with my anthurium, and anthurium don't want or need super bright light. So she gets enough light, but not a ton. So I will eventually probably move her to a brighter window so that she can turn more pink. I just love looking at her. She's so stinking cute. So like usual, bright indirect light for this one. Keep in mind where it grows, how it grows. It's on the ground, it's on the trees. It is not out in the direct sun. So you will burn this plant if you put it in direct sun. Under grow lights is totally fine as long as the grow light is obviously not like, you know, on top of your plant. You always want to leave some space between your grow lights and your plants. And if you notice that your plants are getting damaged, obviously you're going to want to move them out from underneath your grow lights. I tend to recommend Barina T5s if you're looking for really nice, gentle, soft light for your plants. That is just going to work for most plants across the board. So I'm watering again. She's thirsty. She's a thirsty girl. So whereas I can get away with waiting every like 10 to even sometimes 14 days to water certain types of Hoya, no, you can't do that with her. She will shrivel up and she will let you know that she is not happy. So she is in a larger pot. She's a larger plant, so she does hold on to moisture for a little bit longer. So the size of the plant and the amount of soil that it's in matters. Look at her roots. Oh, she's so cute. Her roots are coming out the bottom because usually water ends up sitting in the bottom of this. But as you can see, she's in a pretty chunky mix. She's got these baby fine little roots and she gets watered every like 5 days. If I wait any longer than that, her leaves get really, really bendy. So a rule of thumb that works for most plants is just getting used to what is referred to as the turgidity, how stiff the leaves are when they're fully watered and fully saturated. And then that way you can tell by how bendy they are whether or not they're thirsty. I don't recommend it to beginners because I messed up and overwatered Hoya in the beginning because people told me that the leaves shouldn't be bendy, and if the leaves are bendy, that it's thirsty. But that 100% depends on the species of Hoya that you have. So it's important to get to know the plant and its normal turgidity first before you go using a rule like that. But over time, you will get used to what the plant is supposed to look and feel like when it's been well watered, and she will let you know that you waited too long. Her new growth will shrivel up and die too. If it's got blooms, they will die. So you do want to keep your Hoya well watered to keep them growing and blooming, because I tend to underwater my Hoya. Nobody's surprised by that. But these ones you can't get away with. I killed a bunch of them. But I've had this one for quite some time now, and this one, and they're both doing really, really well. So I feel like I figured it out. They need water. Fertilizer for these guys are going to be the same as any other Hoya. I fertilize them regular in the soil. They get it in their water. But then, of course, I love, love, love to foliar feed my Hoya. I'm like looking around for it. It's right here. My Urban Gardener Super Growth Elixir. They love this stuff. All of their products, I guess it doesn't taste bad. All of their products are safe, non-toxic, made in America, cruelty-free, eco-friendly, all natural, safe for the bees, safe for your pets, safe to spray it and accidentally get it in your mouth. Hoya love, love, love to foliar feed. So if you're not foliar feeding your Hoya, you are missing out. Studies have shown that by doing both, especially with Kelp, which is in here, I put this in my water. When I water my plants, I have the bigger refill bottle. I'll leave it linked down below for you guys with my discount code. And I have the spray bottle. So studies have shown that when you kelp fertilize your roots and your foliage at the same time, that it increases growth exponentially, like across the board for all types of plants. So you're missing out. This doesn't only have kelp in it, it's got a whole bunch of other really cool ingredients that have been specifically curated and chosen for this product to help your plant grow more, be more resilient, and just overall be happier and healthier. And I use it on all my plants, but Hoya in particular, love a foliar spray. So snag yourself some. Don't get the Miracle-Gro garbage. Get yourself something nice and natural and clean and good for you and your plants. So soil, again, like I said, chunky soil mix. I use tons of perlite and bark in my mix. You can see some of it in there, even though there's a bit of a glare, because of how they grow. You guys, they don't actually naturally grow in the soil, so we want to make it as chunky as possible. Hoya have very delicate, fine roots, and they need to be properly aerated. So you don't want to waterlog this plant. Just because this plant wants to be watered and it doesn't want to dry up too much in between waterings doesn't mean that you can drown it either. So make sure that it's in a well draining soil mix. Temperature and humidity on these guys, I keep this room here at 60% humidity and 75 degrees Fahrenheit on average, and they do really well in here. I also grow some in a cabinet, but I have grown them just like out in regular room humidity in the past, and I think it would have been fine. Yeah, I have this one in the window in Connecticut, and it got pretty cold and drafty in that window, and it honestly was fine. I don't recommend keeping tropical plants near drafty windows, obviously, but it really was kind of a non-issue. You just want to pay attention to your watering. Obviously, when you have it in warmer temperatures, the soil is going to dry out faster, and if it's in a colder temperature, the soil is going to take longer to dry. So you just want to make sure that you're adjusting your watering routine based on the environment in which you have the plant growing. And then propagating this babe is super easy. She is just a little bit slow to get started in my experience, but if you keep her nice and moist, she will do just fine. So I recommend actually just propagating them directly in some water, and then once you start to see some roots, a couple inches of roots, you can move them either into a nice little chunky soil mix, or I usually move them to a moss perlite until they have a little bit more substantial roots, and then I decide what to do with them from there. But you don't necessarily have to do all of those steps if you don't want to. It just is what works well for me and what I've had the most success with doing. So I feel like those are all my care tips for this Hoya. She's thirstier. That's the main, if you're gonna take anything away from this video, she is a thirstier Hoya. I would not recommend her for beginners unless you are fairly confident that you are going to pick up on her watering needs fairly quickly. If you keep all the things in mind that I told you, I feel like you shouldn't have a problem, but definitely try and get yourself a more well-established plant. And if you're a beginner, definitely don't start with cuttings. I feel like you're not setting yourself up for as much success as you could be if you got yourself a more established plant, even if it was a smaller plant like this. She's got really great roots and some new growth. A sign of a nice, healthy Hoya are roots, well-established roots, and new growth. You could see the new growth coming right there. So that is how you know these are happy, healthy plants. I won't buy Hoya unless they're actively growing, because they can be a little bit stubborn. But you need some of this if you're having issues with some stubborn Hoya. I promise. You're not going to be mad that you bought it. So that's it for this video, you guys. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, you should give it a thumbs up. I don't know why I'm holding both of these. Like, it's a struggle. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss anything from me, so you don't miss the rest of 12 days of Plantmas. I hope that you are enjoying it so far. I hope you're having a beautiful day wherever you are out there in the world, and I hope I see you again tomorrow. for the next one. Bye!